He never thought a simple basketball hoop could cause trouble. For him, it was just a way to relax after long workdays. He lived in a quiet neighborhood where houses looked the same, and days passed slowly. Every evening, after work, he would step into his driveway, bounce the ball a few times, and shoot until the sun went down. It helped clear his head. Some days, neighborhood kids would walk by, stop, and ask if they could join. He always said yes. The hoop was nothing special. A standard pole, a clear backboard, and a net that had been replaced more than once. It stood at the edge of his driveway, not blocking the road, not touching the sidewalk. Cars passed easily. No one ever complained about noise. In fact, many neighbors smiled when they saw kids playing. Parents liked knowing their children were close by and safe. For months, everything felt normal. The sound of the ball hitting the pavement became part of the neighborhood's rhythm. Even people who didn't like basketball didn't seem to mind. Or at least, that's what he believed. One afternoon, he came home from work and found a white envelope stuck to his door. It had the logo of the Homeowners Association printed at the top. He sighed, but didn't think much of it. HOA letters were usually about lawn height or trash cans left out too long. He opened it while standing in the doorway. The letter said his basketball hoop violated community appearance rules. It stated that driveway sports equipment was not allowed unless approved in writing. He was given 10 days to remove it or face daily fines. He read the letter twice, then a third time. It didn't make sense to him. He had seen other homes with soccer goals and portable nets. Some had trampolines visible from the street. None of them seemed to get letters. That evening, he didn't play. He just stood in the driveway looking at the hoop. It felt strange, like it didn't belong anymore, even though it had been there for a long time. The next day, he emailed the HOA. He kept his words polite and calm. He explained that the hoop was safe, the kids used it, and that it caused no trouble. He asked which rule it violated, and if there was a way to keep it with approval. Days passed without a reply. During that time, neighbors began to notice the tension. Kids still came by asking if they could play. He didn't want to worry them, so he said yes, but the joy felt different. Every bounce of the ball reminded him of the letter. On the 5th day, another notice arrived. This one was shorter and colder. It reminded him of the deadline and mentioned a fine amount per day. It felt less like a warning and more like a threat. He tried calling the HOA office. The line went to voicemail. He left a message. No one called back at night. He lay awake thinking about it. It wasn't really about the hoop anymore. It was about being told what he could and could not do on his own property. He worked hard for his home. He paid his dues on time. He followed the rules. Or at least he thought he did. He walked the neighborhood one evening, paying closer attention than before. He noticed things he hadn't cared about before. A broken fence panel 2 streets down, a boat parked beside a garage, a basketball hoop lying flat in someone's backyard, hidden from view. It became clear to him that rules were being applied unevenly. He took photos not to cause trouble, but to understand. He wanted to know if this was personal or just bad luck. On the 7th day, the HOA finally replied to his email. The message was short. It repeated the rule and said exceptions were not granted. It suggested he remove the hoop to avoid penalties. There was no greeting, no signature. That message changed something in him. Not anger exactly, but resolve. He realized he could fight them, but it would take time and energy. He also realized something else. The rule only applied to properties within the HOA that night. He thought about a piece of land he owned just outside the neighborhood. It was not far, only a few minutes' drive. He had bought it years ago with vague plans that never became real. It was empty, unused, and free from HOA control. The idea came quietly at first. Not a full plan, just a thought. What if he didn't argue? What if he didn't ask for permission at all? The next morning, he removed the hoop from his driveway. Kids watched silently as he laid it down. One of them asked if it was broken. He said no, just moving it for now. The HOA noticed quickly. A final notice arrived, confirming compliance. No apology. No thanks. Neighbors assumed the story was over, but for him, it was just beginning. That weekend, he drove to the empty land. It was overgrown with uneven ground and weeds. He stood there for a long time, imagining, not just a hoop, but space. Freedom. A place where no letter could tell him what joy was allowed. He took photos and measurements. He made notes. The more he thought, the more the idea grew. If he was going to move the hoop, he wasn't going to do it halfway. By Sunday night, he wasn't frustrated anymore. He was focused, and far away, the HOA sat comfortably, believing they had won a small, quiet victory. Unaware that their demand had sparked something much bigger, he spent the next few days planning quietly. The idea of simply moving the hoop had shifted into something bigger in his mind. He didn't want just a driveway hoop anymore. He wanted a place where anyone could come, where kids could play freely without fear of rules or fines, where families could gather and neighbors could laugh together. The empty piece of land outside the HOA's control became more than just land. It became a possibility. He started by clearing small areas of brush and weeds. He wore old gloves and boots, but each movement made him feel lighter, more determined. It was physical work, yes, but it was also mental. Every branch removed, every stone moved, felt like reclaiming something that was rightfully his. He made sketches in a notebook, drawing courts, seating areas, lights, and even a small parking section. It wasn't fancy, but it was real, and that mattered. Meanwhile, the HOA continued as if nothing had changed. They had sent their letters, received compliance, and closed the case in their files. But he had not forgotten. He noticed how some neighbors avoided talking about it, how others seemed uncomfortable when he walked by with the kids. Some whispered about that stubborn homeowner, but most were silent. He thought about talking to people, explaining his plans, but he decided not to. Not yet. There was no need to announce anything until it was real. He wanted to focus on work first, to make something tangible before letting anyone see it. Construction plans were simple at first. He measured the land multiple times, checking slopes, imagining where lights could go, the hoop could be fixed, how the area would feel when full of people. He made a list of materials: concrete, hoops, nets, fencing, lights. Benches and started calling contractors for quotes. Many were skeptical at first. "A basketball court out there?" one asked. "Who's it for?" He explained quietly. "Just for kids and families. Something to give people a place to play." He didn't mention the HOA, didn't tell them about the letters or the fines. He didn't need anyone to be involved in the conflict. He just wanted space for people to enjoy themselves. At home, he researched. He looked into local building codes, insurance, even small-scale tournament organization. He watched videos of community sports arenas, noting what worked and what didn't. He thought about lighting so kids could play safely after school, about seating so parents could watch comfortably. Every detail mattered because it wasn't just a project, it was a promise to anyone who would ever play there during this time. Some kids from the neighborhood came by. They had seen him measuring the land and were curious. They asked questions, their eyes wide with excitement. He smiled and answered carefully, promising that soon they would have a place of their own. He could see it in their faces, the spark that told him this mattered more than he imagined. As the days passed, he found ways to work around his day job. Early mornings and late evenings were dedicated to clearing more land, marking boundaries, and talking with contractors. He even reached out to friends who had experience in construction or basketball, asking for advice and guidance. They were supportive, and their encouragement gave him confidence that he was on the right path. Meanwhile, he couldn't ignore the lingering frustration with the HOA. He thought about the unfairness, the letters, the threats, the fines. But he didn't let it control him anymore. Instead, he used it as fuel. He realized that pushing against their rules on his own property would only lead to more frustration. But finding a place where he was free from their authority, that was power. The first major step was clearing the main court area. He rented small equipment, cut down trees, removed stumps, and leveled uneven ground. It was exhausting work, but he enjoyed every second. There was a rhythm to it, a satisfaction in turning wild land into something useful. By the end of the first week, the land was recognizable as more than just dirt and weeds. Lines were drawn roughly where the court would go, spaces were marked for benches, and a small area was set aside for parking. He called the HOA again, not to argue, but just to confirm one thing: if the land was outside their jurisdiction, there would be no rules against what he was doing. Their polite but vague responses reassured him. They had authority over the neighborhood, but not here. That knowledge gave him freedom he hadn't felt before. The weekends became a mix of work and planning. He found local suppliers for nets, hoops, and concrete. Some were curious why he needed so many materials for a private project, but he explained quietly, just a community thing. For kids, families, anyone who wants to play. No one needed to know the full story yet. Word started to leak slowly. A few neighbors drove by the land, curious about the clearing work. Some waved politely. Others asked questions, and he answered cautiously, never mentioning the HOA, just saying it would be a small basketball area. The energy around the project was growing quietly. People were intrigued, and that made him feel even more determined. One evening, after long hours of work, he sat on a stump with a bottle of water. The sunset stretched across the empty land, casting long shadows over the freshly cleared space. He imagined kids dribbling balls, parents cheering, laughter echoing off the fence. He imagined tournaments, small trophies, local teams coming together. The idea had grown far beyond a single hoop in a driveway. It was becoming a dream, and he could feel it in his bones. The HOA continued their quiet oversight, unaware that their victory had already slipped from their hands. They assumed compliance meant the problem was solved. Meanwhile, he was building something that could not be undone by letters or fines. It was taking shape slowly, carefully, and it would be too late for them to stop it by the time it was finished. At home, he drafted schedules for small games, thought about signage, and even imagined a simple website to keep track of events. His sketches filled with ideas, youth leagues, weekend tournaments, family nights, and basketball clinics. He wanted to make it a space where skill didn't matter, only the joy of playing. By the second month, the first part of the court was taking shape. Contractors poured concrete for the main playing area, and he supervised every detail. Hoops were installed, backboards set at regulation height. He watched as the court slowly turned from an empty piece of land into something functional and inviting kids and families. From the neighborhood were starting to peek over fences or drive by quietly. Curious about progress? Some asked if they could try the hoops once the concrete dried. He smiled and said yes, encouraging them to dream along with him. During this time, he learned patience. Every delay materials late, whether problems, scheduling conflicts, was frustrating, but it also taught him resilience. He discovered the joy of working toward a goal without shortcuts, knowing that the final product would be worth every challenge. He kept detailed notes and photos documenting progress. This wasn't for social media. It was, for him, a record of turning frustration into creation. Every milestone, every small victory, reminded him why he started. As the weeks turned into months, the idea of hosting tournaments began to feel real. He imagined bringing local teams together, organizing friendly competitions, and seeing the neighborhood gather in a way it never had before. The hoop that had caused conflict had sparked a project that could bring people together. On a much larger scale, he often thought back to the day he first received the HOA letter. At the time, it had felt like an attack, unfair and unnecessary. Now, he saw it differently. That letter had forced him to think beyond a simple hoop. It had pushed him to imagine what was possible when limitations were removed and creativity was embraced. By the end of part 2 of his journey, the land was cleared, the court was functional, and the first small structures were in place. He had learned to navigate frustration, to plan carefully, to work steadily toward a dream that was now more tangible than ever. The quiet victories felt good. No one else needed to know the details. The HOA believed they had one. The neighbors were curious. The kids were excited. And he had discovered that turning a problem into an opportunity could create something far greater than anyone expected. The arena began to take shape slowly but surely. What had started as a simple idea, a safe place for kids to play basketball, was becoming something far bigger. The first concrete slab had dried, hoops had been installed, and the boundary fences were up. He walked the land every morning, inspecting the work, imagining the final result. Each day, he could picture the court full of players, cheering families, and the kind of energy he had only ever felt in his driveway with a handful of neighborhood kids. He decided to add seating. Wooden benches were brought in, simple but sturdy. He placed them along the sidelines so parents and friends could watch comfortably. Then came the lights. He wanted evening games to be safe, to give children a place to play after school, and to make the arena feel welcoming even after dark. String lights hung along the perimeter, casting a warm glow over the freshly poured court. Local kids who had been watching from the edges of the project were now allowed to step onto the court. They bounced balls, measured dribbles, and tested the hoops. Laughter echoed across the open land, and for the first time, he felt a real sense of accomplishment. This was no longer just a personal project. It had become a community project. Neighbors started noticing. Some drove by quietly, curious about the transformation. Others asked questions. "Is this open to everyone?" one asked. He smiled and said yes, but carefully explained that it was still under construction and not ready for full use. He didn't tell the full story of the HOA or the fines. That part of the past was a memory now, a motivation rather than a story to share. Word began to spread. People from nearby towns came to see the work in progress. Coaches, local players, and families were intrigued by the promise of a new space for basketball. He began receiving calls asking when the arena would open, whether there would be tournaments, and if local teams could practice there. Every call fueled his excitement and pushed him to work harder. He kept careful notes and plans. Each hoop placement, each line on the court, each bench and light was deliberate. He wanted the arena to be professional, not just functional. He researched how official courts were measured, how lines were drawn, and how lighting affected visibility at night. Every detail mattered because he wanted people to feel respected, not just welcomed. During this time, the HOA remained oblivious. They assumed the problem was over. They had sent their letters, received compliance, and moved on. They had no idea that their rules had inadvertently inspired a project far beyond their control. He hired contractors to help with more permanent structures, a small restroom, storage for equipment, and a shaded area for families. He supervised every step, ensuring that each addition matched the vision he had sketched on paper months earlier. Slowly, the arena was becoming a real place, a destination, rather than just a cleared patch of land. Local kids grew impatient, asking if they could organize small games. He agreed, setting some rules for safety and fairness. Watching them play was a joy. Their excitement reminded him why he had started this project in the first place. He saw the same spark in their eyes that had motivated him. When he first removed the hoop from his driveway, he began planning for the first official tournament. It was simple at first, a single-day event open to kids and teens, with small prizes for fun and recognition. But as he shared the idea quietly with friends and neighbors, interest grew. He realized he would need volunteers, referees, and organization. The challenge excited him. The project was no longer about just building a court. It was about building community. During one of the construction days, he paused to take in the progress. The sun was low in the sky, casting golden light over the new court. The hoops glimmered, the benches were aligned, and the lights hung ready to illuminate evening games. He imagined tournaments, parents cheering, kids hustling up and down the court. He could almost hear the sound of sneakers squeaking on concrete, balls bouncing in rhythm, and the occasional shout of excitement. He began thinking about promotion. A small website, flyers for local schools, and a social media page to update people on events. He didn't want the project to be about him, but about the arena and the opportunities it offered. The goal was simple: make basketball accessible, fun, safe for anyone who wanted to play. Contractors continued to work on finishing touches. A small snack area was added, with tables and umbrellas for shade. Water stations were installed to keep players hydrated. He even added a small area for stretching and warm-ups, because he knew that attention to detail mattered. People would notice these things, and he wanted the arena to feel complete. Interest grew steadily. Parents who had driven by started volunteering, offering to help paint lines, set up nets, or bring extra equipment. Local players offered to coach or referee games. Even teens who had once complained about a lack of activities were now eager to be involved. The arena was becoming a hub, a place where people felt welcome and included. He started organizing regular practice sessions. At first, it was informal kids coming in the evenings, practicing shots, learning basic skills, and playing pickup games. But soon, word spread beyond the neighborhood. Players from nearby towns wanted to join. He realized he needed structure, rules, and schedules. He created simple guidelines for court use, practice times, and fair play. Every day he felt proud. This arena was his response to frustration, to unfair rules, and to the feeling of being powerless. He had taken the anger, the letters, the threats, and turned them into something positive, something larger than himself. He watched people come together, kids learning teamwork, parents sharing stories, and neighbors laughing. The arena was alive, full of energy and hope. Meanwhile, the HOA remained silent. They had no jurisdiction here, and they had no idea how their letters had sparked a project that brought joy to dozens of families. Their authority ended at the neighborhood boundary, and beyond that, the arena grew free from interference. He began documenting the arena's growth. Photos of kids playing, benches being built, nets being hung, and concrete lines painted. Every image told a story of determination and creativity, a story of turning conflict into opportunity. He wasn't doing this for recognition, but the documentation reminded him how far he had come. By the end of part 3, the arena was fully functional. Hoops were in place, benches ready, lights strung, and the court marked with regulation lines. The first official tournament was scheduled for the following month. He could see it, all the excitement on kids' faces, the cheering of parents, sense of community it would bring. The one small hoop in his driveway had led to this. What the HOA thought was the end of a minor complaint had become the beginning of something transformative. The arena was no longer just land, concrete, and hoops. It had become a place where dreams could start, where joy could be shared, and where one person's determination had turned frustration into opportunity. As he walked the court alone one evening, bouncing the ball lightly, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had taken control of a situation that had seemed unfair and created something lasting, something bigger than himself. He had turned anger into action, letters into opportunity, and rules into a chance to build something new. The next chapter was coming. Tournaments, attention, and the possibility of seeing the arena bring people together on a scale he had not imagined. But for now, he walked the court, smiled at the sound of the ball hitting the concrete, and knew that every moment of effort had been worth it. The arena was alive, and the journey was far from over. The day of the first tournament arrived, and he could hardly believe it. What had started as a simple hoop in a driveway had become a fully functional arena filled with excitement, energy, and anticipation. He woke up early, before the sun rose, to make sure everything was in order. Benches were set, nets were checked, lights tested, and the small snack area stocked with water and drinks. Even the restroom and stretching areas were clean and ready. Players began arriving from nearby neighborhoods, some with parents, some with friends, all carrying balls, shoes, and uniforms. The arena was buzzing with energy. Kids who had never played together were already laughing, shaking hands, and introducing themselves. Parents spread blankets on the sidelines, some chatting, some cheering quietly as they watched warm-ups. For the first time, he saw the arena come alive the way he had imagined for months. He walked the court, bouncing the ball slowly, observing. The sound echoed differently here than in a driveway. It was bigger, more open, more alive. Every bounce reminded him of the first day the HOA letter had arrived. At the time, he had felt anger and frustration. But now, standing in the arena surrounded by people who were excited to be there, he felt satisfaction and pride. He had turned conflict into opportunity, and it was beautiful to witness. Small games began to form naturally. Kids grouped together, testing their skills, learning from each other. He noticed a shy boy standing alone, hesitant to join. He walked over, invited him to play, and within minutes, the boy was smiling, dribbling, and laughing with new friends. Moments like that reminded him why he had started this project in the first place. The tournament officially began in the late morning. Teams were small, but energy was huge. Referees' friends he had asked to volunteer kept games fair and safe. Spectators clapped, cheered, and encouraged the players. Some parents even started helping with scorekeeping and organizing breaks. The arena was no longer just a place. It had become a community hub. He noticed the camera phone in one parent's hands, recording shots and moments. Soon, more parents joined in, capturing highlights, smiles, and laughter. Videos were already being shared online, and the story of a small hoop-turned arena began to spread quietly. People outside the neighborhood began asking how they could participate in future events. The arena was attracting attention without him even trying. By midday, the first set of games had ended, and kids gathered in the small, shaded area for water and snacks. He watched them, sitting quietly on a bench, smiling as they discussed plays, argued over who scored the best basket, and laughed at each other's mistakes. He realized that this was exactly what he had hoped for. The arena wasn't just about basketball. It was about connection, joy, and the kind of experiences that stayed with people long after the game ended. He walked over to a group of parents, chatting at the sidelines. "It's incredible," one said. "I can't believe this came from just a hoop in someone's driveway." Another nodded. "Yeah, it's the kind of place we needed. The kids love it, and we feel safe letting them play." He smiled quietly. He didn't need recognition, but hearing it reinforced that this was bigger than himself. By late afternoon, more families had arrived. Some had traveled from nearby towns, curious about the arena. Others came because friends had told them about it. He realized that what had begun as a small, quiet project had already grown beyond what he had imagined. The arena had a life of its own, fueled by excitement and curiosity. Meanwhile, the HOA remained unaware. They still assumed their letter had ended the matter. They had no idea that their demands had sparked the creation of a fully functional arena, bringing together dozens of kids and families. Their authority had never reached this far, and the arena had become a symbol of freedom from rules that had once felt unfair. He noticed how naturally the event ran. Kids rotated between teams, parents shared snacks and water, and everyone respected the small rules he had set. It was organized without being forced, structured without being rigid. The arena had become a place where people could enjoy basketball without stress or judgment, and that balance made him proud. As the day went on, games became more competitive. Kids hustled up and down the court, learning teamwork, practicing skills, and cheering for each other. He watched a small group practicing passes and learned plays, seeing their faces light up with each successful basket. The energy was contagious. Even he found himself dribbling the ball during breaks, joining briefly to test his own skills and laughing with the kids. By evening, the tournament had finished its first round. Winners received small trophies, but the real reward was the excitement on every face. Kids who had never competed together before now knew each other. Parents had formed conversations and connections, and the arena had transformed into a shared space of joy and community. He walked to the center of the court, bouncing the ball slowly again. The sun had set, and the lights he had installed earlier cast a soft glow over the area. It was quiet now, but in the background, laughter and voices still lingered. He realized that the arena had surpassed his expectations. It was more than concrete. Hoops and benches it had become a place where people felt welcome, where friendships were forming, and where memories were being made. Word continued to spread. Local news picked up the story, highlighting the creativity, determination, and community spirit behind the arena. The story emphasized how a simple conflict with the HOA had inspired something far larger than anyone could have imagined. He did not seek the attention, but it came anyway. A quiet validation of the work and effort poured into the project. Some neighbors, who had once criticized him, now approached with smiles. apologizing quietly for doubting him or not understanding the vision. He accepted their words, but he didn't dwell on the past. The arena had grown beyond conflict. Their acceptance was part of the natural evolution of the community. He noticed one group of teens who had once complained about a lack of activities in the area. They were now volunteering, helping younger kids, setting up games, and refereeing with enthusiasm. Their involvement reminded him that the arena wasn't just for fun. It was teaching responsibility, teamwork, and leadership. By the end of the day, the arena was quiet again. Kids went home tired but happy, parents left with smiles and stories to tell. And the small trophies had found their places on shelves at home. He walked alone one last time, bouncing the ball gently and feeling a quiet pride. He thought back to the day he first received the HOA letter and realized how far he had come. What had seemed like a minor conflict over a hoop had led to something far greater. The arena had become a hub for community, a place of joy, and a space where kids could grow, learn, and play without limits. He knew that the journey was not over. There would be more tournaments, more players, more families. There would be challenges, but he also knew that the arena was strong enough to withstand them. The day ended with a quiet satisfaction. He had taken frustration, unfair rules, and conflict and turned them into an opportunity that was bigger than himself. The arena was alive, full of energy and possibility. The letters from the HOA no longer mattered. What mattered now was the laughter, the dribbles, the cheers, and the community that had grown around what had once been a simple hoop in a driveway. And deep down, he knew that the next chapter where the arena would continue to grow, attract attention, and inspire others was only beginning. Months passed, and the arena had become more than anyone could have imagined. What had started as a single basketball hoop in a driveway had transformed into a thriving hub for families, kids and players from all around. The concrete was polished, the hoops were sturdy, lights illuminated the court at night, and benches were always filled with cheering parents. He walked the court in the early morning, taking in the quiet before the day began. This was his time to reflect on everything that had happened and everything he had built. The first tournaments had been a huge success, and word continued to spread. Schools began to reach out, asking if they could use the arena for after-school practice. Local leagues wanted to host games there. Even teenagers who had once been aimless now volunteered, coaching younger kids, refereeing games, and helping with maintenance. He watched them with quiet pride. The arena was teaching more than basketball. It was teaching responsibility, teamwork, and leadership. Parents often thanked him. Some remembered the hoop in the driveway, the letters from the HOA, and the frustration he had faced. They said the arena had changed their children's lives, giving them a safe, fun space to grow. Others admitted they had doubted him at first, but now understood his vision. He accepted their gratitude quietly, knowing it was the collective energy of the community that had made this possible. Even the kids he had first invited were thriving. Some had formed teams that played together daily, while others used the arena simply to have fun, shoot hoops, and challenge their friends. He noticed small moments that made everything worth it. A child celebrating a perfect free throw, a teen helping a younger player improve, parents laughing together as they watched the games unfold. These moments reminded him why he had started this journey. Over time, he introduced new events. Charity games were organized, with local businesses donating small prizes and snacks. Weekend clinics taught kids the basics of basketball, teamwork, and fair play. The arena became more than a place to play, it became a center for learning and community connection. He began collaborating with local coaches, inviting them to run sessions and mentor kids who showed talent or interest in the sport. As the arena grew in reputation, people from outside the town started visiting. Some had heard the story online, how a small hoop and an unfair HOA letter had led to a full-scale community arena. They were curious, excited, and inspired. Many asked him how he had managed it, and he always smiled, explaining simply, "I wanted a place where kids and families could enjoy basketball safely. I didn't expect it to grow this big." HOA, meanwhile, remained in the background. They still had no authority over the arena, and they seemed unaware of the project's true scale. Occasionally, he heard rumors that some of them were quietly impressed, even a little regretful, but nothing was ever said directly. Their letters had inadvertently started something they could never control, and the arena was proof that creativity and determination could overcome restriction. The arena had small traditions now. Weekly games became regular events, and families planned their weekends around them. Kids who were once shy now spoke confidently, learned to lead their teams, and celebrated victories together. He noticed how the arena fostered friendships that extended beyond basketball, as parents and kids alike formed lasting bonds. It had become a place where people felt welcome, safe, and valued. Maintenance became a routine. Every evening, he walked the court, checking the lights, the hoops, and the benches. He replaced worn nets, fixed small cracks in the concrete, and cleaned the area. It was hard work, but it was also rewarding. He took pride in knowing that every detail mattered to the people who used the arena. Each repair or improvement strengthened the sense of community and care. One day, a local journalist arrived to cover the arena. They wanted to tell the story, how a homeowner had transformed frustration with an HOA into a thriving community project. He explained everything calmly, without boasting, highlighting the kids, families, and volunteers who had made it possible. The story was published online and in the local newspaper, and the response was overwhelming. People reached out with offers of support, donations, and interest in participating in events. The arena's impact was now larger than just his town. It had become a symbol of turning challenge into opportunity. With the attention came responsibility. More players meant more organization. He created schedules, assigned volunteers, and coordinated tournaments. He didn't want the arena to feel chaotic or crowded, so he carefully managed the growth. The balance was delicate, but he approached it with the same patience and determination he had used when building the arena from scratch. The arena's first anniversary approached, and he decided to organize a special celebration. A large tournament was planned, with multiple teams, food, music, and fun activities for all ages. Local businesses contributed prizes, and the volunteers he had recruited helped set up the event. On the day of the anniversary, the arena was alive from morning until night. Kids played relentlessly, parents cheered, and even local officials stopped by to observe the success. He stood quietly at the edge of the court, taking it all in, thinking about the hoop that had started it all, the letters, the fines, and the frustration. Every challenge had led to this moment. Even more importantly, he noticed how the arena had changed people. Kids who were once shy now laughed freely, competed confidently, and learned valuable life skills. Parents who had been skeptical now joined in the community, supporting events and celebrating achievements. The arena had become a place of growth, connection, and joy. He reflected often on what he had learned. He realized that the letters from the HOA, the rules, and the conflict had all been part of the journey. They had forced him to think bigger, to plan carefully, and to create something lasting. Without those challenges, he might have kept the hoop in the driveway. Never imagining that he could build something that brought so many people together, the arena also taught him humility. Success wasn't just about his effort, it was about the community. Volunteers, families, and players had all contributed to making the arena a thriving space. Every game, every laugh, every cheer was proof that the arena belonged to everyone who stepped onto the court. As months turned into years, the arena continued to grow. He introduced mentorship programs for teens, workshops for kids, and tournaments that brought together players of different ages and skill levels. It was a place where effort, practice, and perseverance were rewarded, and where everyone was encouraged to enjoy the game. Occasionally, he thought about the HOA. Their letters and fines now felt like distant memories, almost surreal. What they had tried to control with rules and authority had instead become the spark for something far greater. The arena stood as proof that creativity, persistence, and determination could turn conflict into opportunity, frustration into progress, and limits into freedom. He often walked the court alone, bouncing a ball, thinking quietly about the journey. The first day, the letters, the removal of the hoop, clearing the land. And building everything from scratch, it had been exhausting, frustrating, and challenging. Yet here he was, surrounded by laughter, joy, and a thriving community. Every step, every drop of sweat, every challenge had been worth it. And now, the arena was more than just a place to play. It was a symbol of resilience, creativity, and the power of turning obstacles into opportunities. The small hoop that once sparked conflict had grown into a space where dreams could start, where communities could connect, and where people could experience joy, friendship, and growth. He knew this was only the beginning. The arena would continue to host tournaments, workshops, and events for years to come. Kids would grow up learning teamwork, respect, and confidence. Parents would continue to form connections. Volunteers would teach and guide. And every time a ball bounced on the court, it would be a reminder that what starts small can grow into something extraordinary when determination and vision guide the way. The arena had become a legacy, not because of the challenges he faced, but because of how he responded to them. He had taken frustration, unfair rules, and conflict and turned them into joy, growth, and community. The letters from the HOA, the small fines, and the rules were gone, irrelevant in comparison to what had been built. And as he walked through the arena one evening, watching the sun set over the court, he knew that the dream had been realized. What began as a single basketball hoop had become a place of connection, laughter, growth, and hope. The arena was alive, full of energy and potential. It would continue to inspire anyone who stepped onto its court for years to come.